I've been lucky enough to visit Venice. I went for my 18th birthday with my granny. My granny, she's a bit of a legend in our family. We arrived, we thought we booked a hotel and discovered that we hadn't booked a hotel. It was all in Italian and I thought the booking was confirmed. Apparently not. And then we spent the rest of the day traipsing around this beautiful city, desperately trying to find accommodation for the night that was up to my grandma's standards because she has very high standards. Eventually we did find one. It came at a pretty price, but alas, Granny she picked up the bill, so that was okay. I just basked in the luxury of Venice for the weekend. Yeah, very memorable trip. Have you been? I would love to know if you've been. Because today we're looking at The Merchant of Venice, specifically Portia's monologue from Act 4, Scene 1. We're going to look at some of the most important characters from the play. We'll look at the summary, what happens in the story arc. I'm going to do a performance of Portia's monologue, and then we're going to do a breakdown of that monologue. Let's look at the characters. Antonio is a sombre, loyal, honest merchant of Venice. He borrows money from Shylock but fails to pay it back and is put on trial. Bassanio is loving, light-hearted, and a bit of a spendthrift. He's best friends with Antonio and wants to marry Portia. Shylock is a Jewish moneylender who lends money at high rates of interest. He lends money to Antonio, but instead of charging interest, he wants a pound of Antonio's flesh if the money is not repaid in full within 3 months. Portia, the heroine of today's lesson, is a smart and gracious and beautiful heiress who marries Bassanio. She also disguises herself as a lawyer to help persuade Shylock show mercy to Antonio. It's funny, I'm not really doing myself justice with these names. As someone who's quarter Italian, I'm there like Antonio, Bassanio, Portia. That's my Mancunian accent coming through. Really, it should be Bassanio, Antonio, Portia. You know, like it should have that exotic ring to it. Unfortunately, guys, I am more Mancunian than I am Italian. So we're going to be hearing the long Oasis-style drawn-out versions of these names. What about the summary? Bassanio wishes to marry a beautiful heiress called Portia, but to do this, he needs money to travel to her home in Belmont and money to dress himself in the finest clothes. Bassanio asks his best friend, a wealthy merchant called Antonio, who agrees to lend him the money. However, Antonio doesn't have the money at that moment. All his money is tied up in the ships at sea, and he won't have it until they return. But Bassanio is so dear to Antonio that he borrows the money from a wealthy Jewish man, Shylock. Antonio agrees to pay back Shylock once his ships have returned to Venice. However, in the past, Antonio has treated Shylock like a dog, spitting on him in the street. Anti-Semitism was rife at this time. When Antonio asks Shylock for a loan, Shylock agrees on one condition. If he does not pay it back within 3 months, he wants a pound of Antonio's flesh. Antonio agrees, but when all his ships fail to return, Antonio is put on trial. Meanwhile, Bassanio marries Portia, but soon hears that Antonio's in trouble. He tells Portia and she encourages him to rush home and help his friend. In the famous trial scene that we're about to look at, Shylock refuses to break his bond and argues for justice. So, basically, I want a pound of Antonio's flesh, whatever it costs, I don't care. I'm not going to break my bond. We made this agreement and I refuse to break it. So, effectively, everybody in the trial, in the courtroom, is about to see Shylock cut a piece of Antonio's flesh off. So this is like really heavy stuff. However, Portia is disguised as a lawyer and tries to persuade Shylock to show justice and let Antonio go free. So that's what the monologue's about. Trying to persuade Shylock to break his bond. So now we have some context. Let's look at Portia's monologue. Quality of mercy. is not strained. It droppeth. It's the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. 'Tis twice blessed. Blesseth him that gives and him that takes. It is mightiest and mightiest. It becomes the throne monarch better than his crown. His sceptre, a force of temporal power, the attribute to awe and majesty, wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. But mercy's above this sceptred sway. It is enthroned in the hearts of kings. It is the attribute to God himself. An earthly power doth then show like as gods, when mercy seasons justice. Therefore, Jew, though justice be thy plea, consider this, that in the course of justice, none of us shall see salvation. We do pray for mercy, and that same prayer doth teach us all to render the deeds of mercy. I have spoken thus much to mitigate the justice of thy plea, which if thou follows the strict court of Venice, must needs give sentence against the merchant there. The first lines are attention-grabbing. She begins with an understatement. So this is a literary technique that deliberately expresses an idea and makes it seem less important than it actually is. So usually its purpose is for ironic emphasis or for politeness and tact. Here it's ironic. Portia's trying to figure out what mercy is made from. And she correctly points out, it's not strained. Strained means it's kind of squandered away, it's tense, it's uncomfortable and difficult. Portia's saying that mercy should flow freely. It should not be tense or difficult. If someone's being merciful, truthfully, it should feel effortless to give forgiveness. Then we have a simile. This is beautiful. As the gentle rain from heaven. She expands on her understatement with a simile. Think of rain. It's natural. It's effortless. The earth gives rain freely. And what's more, it nurtures the soil so plants can grow. And this sort of reference to heaven, it has a godlike quality. It elevates it, how both rain and mercy are similar in that they are sacred. The earth needs rain to survive. Humanity needs mercy to survive too. Because really, what would the world be without mercy? It would all just be black and white admin and laws that could not be broken. She's saying that for humanity to survive, we need to be able to have that compassion and be able to give mercy quite freely. In the line, it blesseth him that gives and him that takes, we have an example of parallelism. It's about balancing two or more ideas to make them equally as important. An example of parallelism that is famous is Neil Armstrong's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. So in this quote, Portia points out that mercy can only benefit both parties, the person who gives the mercy and the person who receives it. We also have some amazing symbolism. It becomes the throne monarch better than his crown. A crown is a symbol of power, of a king or a queen. If a king or a queen has a merciful soul, this is more important than any amount of power that they have. That's a pretty strong case to make coming from Portia, but it's pretty brilliant. I'm persuaded already. I'm like, let Antonio go. Portia expands on this symbolism in the next line, shows the force of temporal power. Now, a royal has two types of power, earthly power and godly power. And I go into this in much more detail in my Patreon slides and notes. Then we have alliteration, wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. So Portia's making a reference to their earthly power here. And this is the line for me which feels most ambiguous. Is Shakespeare saying that when a royal monarch acknowledges their earthly power, they realise how fleeting and how limited it is? Does it remind them of death, of their impermanence? So does this thought create fear and dread for them? Or on the other hand, is Shakespeare saying, it's frightening to be so powerful, to have people love and fear you the way people love and fear God? Again, these are just two interpretations. You gravitate to what you feel works best, or what you understand most, what you feel you can explain in the exam best. Here we have sibilance, sceptred sway. Portia here is saying, when we practice being merciful, we're almost transcending our human existence. Mercy is the core trait that makes a great royal. It means that they're compassionate, and we can all be like kings and queens if we too practice mercy. In fact, even better yet, we become godlike because mercy is a quality of the gods. And that sibilance, sceptred sway, it has a wistfulness to it, a persuasiveness that really gets you in the heart. Our last literary device is the simile. And earthly power doth then show like as gods when mercy seasons justice. It's brilliant. She's basically saying the same thing that she was in the previous line. She's just hammering it home. She's saying when we practice mercy, our earthly powers increase tenfold and we become like gods. And I love this. I love this line. When mercy seasons justice. It makes me think of a salt shaker. Sort of serving up justice on a plate, but then sprinkling of mercy just to soften it. Love that image. Just a note on Portia's tone of voice. So her tone of voice becomes more formal, factual and rational. She challenges Shylock and she makes a huge statement, but she doesn't pressurize him. She uses persuasive techniques all the way through. As you can see, we've been through some of them. And she creates this perfect balance between logic and emotive literary devices. In the first half of a monologue, she speaks to the room. In the second half, however, she speaks directly to Shylock, because ultimately, he's the one that will decide whether he's going to take a pound of Antonio's flesh and kill him while doing so. One last thing, which I think is really important. In my research, I came across a lot of people saying that this kind of speech is based on careful process of human reasoning and not emotion. I disagree respectfully. Yes, Portia has a methodical mind. No one can doubt that. But you can't help but be moved emotionally by the way she delivers this argument. It's a beautiful blend of rationality and emotion, which is precisely what makes this speech so powerful. Ugh, sore throat. I'm working extremely hard for you guys, so if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. It takes you 1 second. Also, did you know every single video I've ever covered on my channel, there are slides and notes, extra slides and notes. You can get your hands on them by heading to my Patreon. If you've got Instagram, come and give me a follow. Oh, and there's this amazing film adaptation of The Merchant of Venice, so I'll link to that below.